Step into a world where dawn breaks over rice fields, heavy with mist and the weight of duty. It's imperial China, not the glittering palaces of emperors, but the mud-soaked life of a peasant bowing low to elders as hunger gnaws at his children. Across oceans, feel the Sierra Nevada's icy grip, where a mother shields her child from snow, their wagon trapped in a dream gone wrong. These aren't tales of glory, they're whispers of survival, of hearts that beat through toil and despair. Picture the farmer's calloused hands, the pioneer's frostbitten steps, each a quiet rebellion against a world that demands everything. Can you taste the thin congee? Hear the wind's cruel howl? These lives, forgotten by history's grand scrolls, wove its truest threads. From Confucian chains to the Donner Party's desperate choices, their resilience hums like a lullaby in the dark. Settle in, let the night wrap you close, and wander with me into these haunting paths where every struggle is a spark, every survival a song that lingers. Let's start by imagining the sweep of this empire, stretching across centuries, from the Qin dynasty's first unification around 221 BCE to the Qing's final bow in 9020. Imperial China wasn't just a place, it was a force, a civilization that set the bar for what a society could be. Think of it like a vast, intricate machine, humming with inventions like gunpowder, paper, the compass, and printing, each one reshaping the world far beyond its borders. Philosophers like Confucius and Laozi spun ideas that still echo in our thoughts today, guiding everything from family dinners to statecraft. Artisans painted landscapes on silk, their brushes dancing with mist and mountains, while poets carved verses that felt like whispers from the stars. And the bureaucracy? It was a marvel, a system so precise it could govern millions across mountains and deserts, with scrolls and seals keeping the empire's pulse steady. This was a civilization that built the Great Wall, a stone serpent snaking over peaks, and the Forbidden City, a palace so grand it felt like heaven's own courtyard. But here's the thing, don't let the shine blind you. For all its brilliance, Imperial China was a tough place to call home, especially if you weren't born with a silver chopstick in your mouth. Life here was like walking a tightrope, where every step had to follow the rules of tradition, duty, and order. The empire's grandeur came at a cost, paid in the sweat of farmers, the cramped hands of scholars, the silent toil of women. Picture a village at dawn, the rooster's cry slicing through the mist. A farmer trudges to his fields, knowing his rice will feed the emperor's armies, but barely his own children. A mother kneels by the hearth, stirring congee, her mind on taxes that might take their last sack of grain. This wasn't a world of fairy tales. It was a world of endurance, where survival meant fitting into a system that didn't bend. What made Imperial China so complex? It was the balance of beauty and control. The emperor, called the Son of Heaven, sat at the top, his rule backed by the mandate of heaven, a divine nod that kept him on the throne as long as the crops grew and rebellions stayed quiet. If floods came or bandits roamed, well, heaven might have changed its mind, and a new dynasty would rise from the ashes. This wasn't just politics, it was cosmic, a belief that tied every rice stalk to the stars. Below the emperor, a web of officials ran the show. Men who'd clawed their way up through the imperial exams, memorizing Confucian texts until their eyes blurred. These scholars weren't just bureaucrats, they were the empire's brain, quoting philosophy to keep the wheels turning. But their wisdom came from a system that prized obedience over innovation, memory over dreams. For the common folk, life was a different story. Farmers, the backbone of the empire, were praised in Confucian texts as noble, but that didn't mean a full belly or a day off. They worked from dawn to dusk, their lives tied to the land and the tax collector's ledger. Artisans, crafting porcelain or paper, were skilled but undervalued. their hands shaping beauty for others to enjoy. Merchants, dripping in silver, were scorned as moral leeches, profiting off others' labor, and at the bottom, soldiers, servants, butchers, actors, people the empire needed but never respected. Women? They were barely on the map, expected to serve fathers, husbands, and sons, their lives a quiet hum of duty. This hierarchy wasn't just social, it was sacred, a blueprint for harmony that kept the empire steady, but individuals small. Why was this system so rigid? It was about stability. China's vastness, millions of people, countless regions demanded order. Confucianism, with its focus on respect, hierarchy, and duty, was the glue. But stability came with a price. Individuality, that was a spark the empire didn't need. Your role was set at birth, and straying from it was like defying the stars. Yet, within this iron frame, people found ways to shine. A farmer's song in the fields, a poet's verse smuggled into a scroll, a mother's quiet strength. These were the empire's hidden heartbeat, the human spirit flickering in the cracks. This introduction sets the stage for a world of contrasts, grandeur and grit, order and oppression. Imperial China was a civilization that built wonders but demanded sacrifice, a place where every rice grain carried the weight of duty. As we drift through this tale, we see not just an empire, but its people, their lives, a quiet defiance of the system's weight. That's the story we're telling, not just the palaces, but the hands that built them. Now, as we linger in this vast empire, the palace's glow fading into the fields, let's zoom in on the people who kept it alive. Imperial China wasn't just a stage for emperors. It was a pyramid, each layer fixed, each life shaped by where you stood. Picture that farmer again, his muddy boots rooted in the earth, or a scholar, his brush trembling over a scroll. How did this rigid social hierarchy decide their fates? And what did it mean to live in a world where your place was set before you were born? That's where we're headed next, into the tiers of society, where every bow, every roll, held the empire together. So, let's keep wandering these ancient paths, where duty meets dreams and resilience whispers in the dark. Imagine you're born in a small village, under the Tang dynasty. The year is 700 CE, and the empire's at its zenith. The moment you open your eyes, society hands you a role and expects you to play it perfectly. This isn't a world of second chances or chasing dreams. It's a pyramid, each tier fixed, each person slotted into a place that keeps the empire's harmony intact. At the very top sits the emperor, the Son of Heaven, a title so grand it feels like the stars bow to him. He rules by the mandate of heaven, a divine contract that says his power is sacred as long as the rivers flow and the harvests hold. But if famine strikes or rebels rise, well, heaven might pick a new favorite, and dynasties fall like leaves. This wasn't just a king, it was a cosmic linchpin, holding the universe in balance. Right below him are the scholar officials, the empire's brain trust. These men spent their lives hunched over bamboo scrolls, memorizing Confucian texts until their fingers cramped and their backs curved. They earned their place through the imperial exams, a grueling gauntlet that made modern tests look like a breeze. Passing meant silk robes, a government post, and a seat at the table of power. Failing, back to the fields. Your family's hopes crushed. These scholars weren't just bureaucrats. They were the empire's moral compass, quoting philosophy to justify every edict, their words as sharp as their brushes. But their high status came with a catch: they were expected to be perfect, their lives a performance of wisdom and restraint. Next come the farmers, the empire's muddy, sun-scorched backbone. Confucian doctrine sang their praises, calling them noble for feeding the millions who kept the dynasty alive. Picture a man like Wei, knee-deep in a rice paddy, his hands planting seedlings that'll fill the emperor's granaries. But respect didn't mean comfort. Wei's taxes took most of his crop, leaving his family with just enough to scrape by. No dental care, no days off, just endless work under a sky that didn't care. Farmers were vital, but their lives were tethered to the land's whims and the tax collector's scroll. Below them, artisans, potters, weavers, carpenters who shaped the empire's beauty with their hands. They crafted porcelain bowls, silk fans, paper scrolls, each piece a marvel. But their skill didn't earn them respect. They were seen as useful, not noble. Their work admired, but their lives overlooked, like the clay under their nails. Then there were merchants, a walking paradox. Richer than most, draped in silks, they traded goods across the Silk Road, their coins piling high. But Confucian values sneered at profit-making as morally slippery. No matter how much silver you had, you were still a social outcast, treated like a sly peddler in a fancy robe. At the bottom, a mix of souls the empire needed, but never embraced soldiers, servants, butchers, actors, criminals. These were the outcasts, the ones you wouldn't seat at a banquet. Soldiers risked their lives but were scorned as tools of violence. Actors, entertaining crowds, were seen as liars in costume. Monks floated in a gray space, holy, yet odd with their shaved heads and bare feet. And women? They weren't even on the pyramid, more like the dust beneath it. Born to obey fathers, then husbands, their lives were a quiet march of duty, their worth tied to producing sons. Why was this hierarchy so unyielding? Harmony was the empire's lifeblood. With millions to govern across vast lands, order trumped everything. Confucianism, with its rules of respect and roles, was the glue, teaching that every bow, every duty, kept the cosmos aligned. But this order crushed dreams. If you were born a farmer, you'd die one. A merchant's wealth couldn't buy respect. A woman's wit had no stage. This wasn't just social, it was sacred. A system where stepping out of line was like defying heaven itself. Yet, within this rigid frame, people found ways to endure. Wei, the farmer, sang to his fields, his voice a small rebellion against toil. A merchant shared his silver with a struggling neighbor, proving worth beyond society's scorn. A woman wove stories for her children, her words a spark in the dark. The hierarchy was iron, but human resilience was steel, bending just enough to survive. This system wasn't just a structure. It was a story of control and quiet defiance, where every life, from emperor to outcast, held the empire's weight. As we linger in this layered world, the scholar's candle dimming and the farmer's song fading, let's step closer to daily life. The hierarchy set your place, but how did it shape your every move? From dawn to dusk, picture waking to a rooster's cry, bowing to your elders, your day a dance of rituals and respect. How did filial piety, the heart of Confucian life, bind families and burden them? That's where we're headed next, into the quiet routines where duty ruled and every gesture carried meaning. So, let's keep wandering these ancient paths, where tradition meets toil and hope whispers softly. Waking in a small village under the Song dynasty, around 1100 CE, the rooster's crow slices through the dark, and the village bell clangs like it's calling the ancestors themselves. You open your eyes, stretch your aching limbs, and feel the weight of the day before you even stand. This isn't a world where you ease into your morning. It's a world where you're born into a script, and the first line is respect. Welcome to daily life in Imperial China, where every moment is a ritual and filial piety, the Confucian ideal of devotion to family, is the air you breathe. It's not just a value, it's a law, written in your bones, tying you to parents, grandparents, and the ghosts of generations past. Your day starts with a bow, not to a god or a dream, But to your father, your mother, maybe your grandfather if he's still grumbling by the hearth, picture young May, a farmer's daughter, rising from her straw mat. She kneels before her parents, her forehead grazing the floor, her hands steady despite the chill. This isn't just politeness. It's filial piety, a sacred duty that says, your family's honor is your life's work. Forget to bow, and you're not just rude. You're inviting shame that could haunt your bloodline for 7 generations. May bows again before breakfast. Then when her great-aunt shuffles in, maybe once more, if her father coughs pointedly. By sunrise, she's bowed half a dozen times, each gesture a reminder you're not your own. You belong to those who came before. This isn't a casual custom, it's the glue of society. Filial piety, rooted in Confucianism, taught that respecting elders kept families, villages, even the empire in harmony. Speak out of turn, like asking why you're washing your uncle's feet, and you've committed unfilial behavior, a sin just shy of setting the village on fire. Imagine May, slipping up during morning tea, questioning her father's orders. The room goes still, her mother's eyes widen, and her grandfather mutters about cosmic disgrace. She'd need to apologize with 3 deep bows, maybe a forehead-to-floor touch, to mend the rift. In this world, words are dangerous, and respect is non-negotiable. Even the furniture judges you most homes had no chairs, just mats. So you're kneeling through lectures on duty that stretch longer than the Yellow River. Daily life was a dance of hierarchy. Age trumped youth, men outranked women, fathers ruled all. Even among siblings, the eldest could hush the youngest with a glance. Picture a family meal, everyone on the floor, facing the ancestral shrine. No chatter, no dreams shared, just silent, chewing under the weight of tradition. If you're the youngest, like May's little brother, you nod, smile, and pray you're not blamed for a spilled bowl. There's no good morning here, only a series of bows, and a quiet hope you don't offend someone powerful, like your great-uncle who's still mad about last year's harvest. This wasn't just family life. It was a microcosm of the empire, where every role mirrored the emperor's divine order. Why was filial piety so intense? It was about survival. In a vast empire of millions, order was everything. Confucianism taught that strong families built strong villages, which built a strong state. Disrespecting your father wasn't just personal, it was a crack in the cosmos, a threat to the mandate of heaven. The government backed this with laws: neglect your parents, and you could face flogging or exile. But it wasn't all fear. Filial piety bound families through hardship. Parents sacrificed for children, expecting care in old age. May's mother, weaving late into the night, knows her daughter will tend her when she's frail. This mutual duty was a lifeline in a world without safety nets. The toll was heavy, though. Constant deference stifled voices, especially for women and the young. May's dreams of learning to read, buried under chores and bows. Her brother's wish to travel, smothered by his father's glare. Yet, resilience flickered. Families shared quiet moments. A mother's lullaby, a father. Let's step into the quiet hum of an imperial Chinese household, where the hearth casts a faint glow and the air smells of steamed rice and duty. It's the Song Dynasty, around 1100 CE, and a family gathers on woven mats, their bowls rough ceramic, their spoons carved from wood. Picture a steaming bowl of congee, thin as morning mist, or a rare sliver of pickled vegetable floating like a lost wish. These weren't just meals. They were mirrors of a society bound by scarcity, hierarchy, and tradition. The heart of dining in imperial China was its stark simplicity, especially for peasants. Food wasn't a celebration, it was a necessity, often a reminder of life's limits. The staple was congee, a rice porridge made by boiling rice in water until it surrendered into a soupy haze. Imagine a farmer's wife, Lee, stirring a pot over a smoky fire, her hands calloused from the fields. The congee is watery, barely filling, with a pinch of salt if the family's lucky. On a good day, a stray bit of pickled radish or cabbage might bob to the surface, a fleeting spark of flavor. For most, though, it's just hot, wet, nothing. Eaten not for joy, but to quiet the stomach's growl. This wasn't laziness or lack of skill, it was economics. Rice was precious, stretched thin to feed families, and anything more was a luxury reserved for festivals or the elite. Why was the diet so sparse? Scarcity ruled. Grain rice in the south, millet or wheat in the north was the empire's lifeblood, but harvests were fickle. Droughts, floods, or locusts could slash yields, and taxes claimed much of what grew. A peasant like Lee's husband might toil all year, only to see half his rice carted off to the emperor's granaries or the local lord's storehouse. What remained had to last through winter, when fields lay fallow and hunger crept closer. The Confucian ideal of harmony didn't fill bellies, and the empire's vastness meant food distribution was uneven. Cities might have markets, but villages often scraped by on what they grew. This wasn't just hunger. It was a structural reality, where survival meant making a single sack of grain stretch for months. Meat was a distant dream. Pork, chicken, or fish appeared only at weddings, festivals, or when an animal was too old to work. Picture a rare Lunar New Year feast, where Lee's family shares a sliver of pork belly, each bite savored like a prayer. Eggs, when available, were preserved in salt or ash, their texture more fossil than food, a far cry from a fresh scramble. For the poor, protein was a memory, not a meal. Even nobles ate sparingly. Meat was a status symbol, not a daily indulgence, reserved for banquets where spiced duck or carp flaunted wealth. Peasants made do with soybeans, boiled into tofu or fermented into paste. Cheap but nourishing, a quiet nod to ingenuity in a world of want. Tea was the one constant, not for leisure, but for safety. Water from wells or rivers was often suspect, tainted by waste or silt. Boiling it for tea killed some dangers, making it the drink of choice. Imagine Lee serving tea in chipped cups, her family sipping slowly, not to relax but to avoid the sickness lurking in unboiled streams. Tea wasn't fancy, no jasmine blends here, just bitter leaves, a practical ritual in a life of caution. Dining itself was a ritual, steeped in Confucian order. Meals were eaten in silence, facing the ancestral shrine, a nod to those who came before. Chatter was taboo. You didn't share dreams or gossip. You chewed, bowed, and honored the dead. Elders ate first, men before women, the youngest last, mirroring the empire's hierarchy. A spilled bowl or a loud slurp wasn't just clumsy, it was disrespect, a crack in the family's honor. The consequences of this diet were heavy. Grain-heavy meals filled bellies but lacked nutrients. Malnutrition was common, stunting children, weakening adults, making diseases like dysentery deadlier. Scurvy crept in when vegetables were scarce, and constant labor burned calories faster than congee could replace them. Emotionally, the silence of meals weighed on the spirit. Food should spark joy, a laugh, a story, but here it was duty, another bow to tradition. Yet this silence fostered bonds. Lee's family, sharing a rare pickled plum, felt a flicker of warmth, their quiet glances a language of care. The ancestral shrine, looming over the table, wasn't just tradition, it was a reminder of survival, of generations who ate the same gruel and endured. Why was dining so ritualized? Confucianism demanded it. Harmony flowed from order, and meals were a stage for filial piety. Eating silently, serving elders first, facing the shrine, these acts reinforced the empire's structure, from family to emperor. The government backed this with moral weight-neglect ritual, and you risked cosmic imbalance. But practicality played a role too. Silence conserved energy in a world of scarcity, and hierarchy ensured scarce food went to those deemed vital elders, men, workers. This wasn't cruelty. It was survival math, honed over centuries. Resilience shone through the cracks. Lee stretched her kanji with wild greens, her knowledge a lifeline. Families shared festival pork, a single bite binding them closer than words. Villagers traded soybeans or salt, their barters a web of mutual aid. Women especially were unsung heroes, coaxing flavor from nothing. Their pots, a quiet rebellion against hunger. The dining table, sparse as it was, wasn't just a place to eat, it was a place to endure, to honor, to hope. Every bowl of kanji was a choice to keep going, a thread in the empire's vast tapestry. This world of food and dining reveals Imperial China's soul, a place where scarcity met ritual, where hunger bowed to duty, the silent meal, the watery gruel, the rare taste of meat. These weren't just sustenance, but symbols of a society that prized order over ease. Lee's family, eating under the shrine's gaze, weren't just surviving, they were upholding a system that shaped an empire, their resilience a quiet pulse in its heart. Now, as we linger by this humble table, the kanji bowls empty and the shrine's glow fading, let's turn to the clothes that wrapped these lives. Food sustained the body, but clothing marked your place in the empire's order. Picture Lee's coarse hemp tunic, scratching her skin, or a noble silk robe, shimmering like a river. How did fabric, color, and even foot binding define roles and dreams? That's where we're headed next, into a world where what you wore wasn't choice but law, and every thread told a story of duty. So, let's keep wandering these ancient paths, where tradition meets toil and hope flickers softly. Let's slip into the quiet weave of Imperial China, where the morning light filters through a village's thatched roofs and the air carries the faint rustle of fabric. It's the Ming Dynasty, around 1400 CE, and a peasant woman tugs at her coarse tunic, her hands brushing hemp that scratches like a whispered rebuke. Across the village, a noble silk robe glimmers like a river under moonlight, while a young girl winces as her bound feet ache beneath embroidered slippers. This is part 5 of our journey, diving into the clothing and foot binding of Imperial China, a world where what you wore wasn't a choice but a decree, where every thread and fold told the empire's story of hierarchy and sacrifice. Picture a society where a yellow sash could mean death for the wrong wearer, where beauty was measured in pain. The core of this world was control. Clothing wasn't about comfort or self-expression, it was a uniform, a badge of your place in the empire's rigid order. For peasants, fabric meant hemp rough, itchy, woven from the same plant that fed their livestock. Imagine Zhang, a farmer, pulling on his hemp tunic, its fibers chafing his skin after a day in the rice paddies. It's not just uncomfortable, it's a constant reminder of his station, as plain as the mud on his boots. Nobles, though, draped themselves in silk, smooth and shimmering, each yard a fortune spun from countless silkworms. Picture a scholar official, his robe flowing like poetry, its sheen a boast of wealth and rank. Silk wasn't just fabric, it was power, a privilege peasants could only glimpse in passing. This divide wasn't accidental, it was law. The empire's sumptuary codes dictated who could wear what, down to sleeve width and belt ornaments. Yellow, the color of the sun, was sacred, reserved for the emperor alone. Imagine a merchant, flush with silver, daring to wear a yellow sash. He's not starting a trend, he's risking execution, his ambition snuffed out for defying heaven's order. Even colors like purple or red were noble privileges, while peasants were stuck with drab browns and grays. These laws weren't just about aesthetics. They reinforced the Confucian hierarchy, ensuring everyone knew their place at a glance. A misplaced hat or a too fancy belt could land you in court, branded a usurper of rank. Foot binding, though, was the era's cruelest fashion. For high-born girls, it began around age 5, their feet broken, folded, and bound tightly to create lotus feet, no longer than a man's thumb. Imagine young May, her toes crushed under cloth, her cries muffled as her mother insists it's for her future. These tiny feet were deemed beautiful, a mark of refinement that made walking a hobbling art. But the cost was lifelong pain, infections, and crippled mobility. May's bound feet meant she'd never run through fields or work like peasant girls. Her worth was in her stillness, her agony a currency for marriage. Foot binding wasn't universal peasant women, needed for labor, escaped it but for elite women. It was a prison of silk slippers, their beauty a permanent wound. Why was clothing so regulated? Order was the empire's heartbeat. With millions to govern, the dynasty needed visible markers to keep society aligned. Confucianism taught that harmony flowed from roles, and clothing was a daily sermon on duty. A peasant's hemp tunic said, "Work." A noble's silk robe said, "Rule." Sumptuary laws, enforced by magistrates, ensured no one blurred those lines, preserving the cosmic balance the emperor upheld. Foot binding, though, was cultural, not legal, rooted in ideals of femininity that prized fragility over freedom. It spread from Tang courtesans to Song elites, a status symbol that chained women to the inner chambers, their bound feet a silent vow of obedience. The consequences were stark. Hemp clothing offered little protection. Zhang shivers through winters, his tunic thin against the wind. Silk, while luxurious, was impractical, weighing nobles down in summer heat. Bureaucrats wore layered robes year-round, their discomfort a badge of status. Foot binding was worse, crippling women physically and socially. May's bound feet barred her from labor or travel, her world shrinking to a courtyard. Infections or gangrene could kill, and even survivors faced chronic pain. Emotionally, clothing and foot binding reinforced submission. Zhang's tunic humbled him. May's slippers silenced her. Yet these were accepted, even revered, as signs of virtue, duty for men, beauty for women. Resilience flickered in small ways. Peasants like Zhang patched their tunics, each stitch a defiance of wear. Women wove hemp by hand, their skill turning scraps into warmth. Elite women, despite bound feet, mastered embroidery, their needles crafting art that spoke where words couldn't exhaust. Merchants, scorned but rich, wore fine hemp to skirt silk bands, their cunning a quiet rebellion. Clothing wasn't just restriction, it was a canvas for survival, where every mend or motif held a spark of agency. This world of clothing and foot binding reveals Imperial China's soul, a place where beauty was law, where sacrifice wore a silken mask. Zhang's hemp, May's lotus feet, the noble's robe. These weren't just garments, but symbols of a society that prized order over ease. The sumptuary codes, the bound toes, the emperor's yellow, they wove a tapestry of control, where every thread reinforced the empire's hierarchy. Yet the mended tunic, the embroidered slipper, the merchant's sly choice, they whisper of endurance, of lives that bent but didn't break under tradition's weight. As we linger in this woven world, Zhang's tunic fraying and May's slippers fading, let's step into the fields and workshops where these clothes were worn. Clothing marked your place, but work defined your days. Picture Zhang, knee-deep in a rice paddy, or an artisan shaping clay under a smoky roof. How did labor, relentless and unyielding, shape lives and sustain the empire's grandeur? That's where we're headed next, into a world where every sweat-soaked hour was a duty, and every tool a tether to survival. So, let's keep wandering these ancient paths, where toil meets tradition, and hope burns quietly. Let's step into the sun-scorched fields and smoky workshops of Imperial China, where the air hums with the clink of tools and the rhythm of endless labor. It's the Yuan dynasty, around 30,000 CE, and a farmer bends over a rice paddy, his hands planting seedlings in sticky mud. Nearby, an artisan hunches over a pottery wheel, shaping clay for a far-off market, while a woman weaves hemp thread by a dim hearth. The heart of this world was relentless labor, a cycle as unyielding as the seasons. For most, work wasn't a passion or a path to wealth. It was survival, dictated by the land, the lord, and the emperor's decrees. Farmers, the empire's backbone, bore the heaviest load. Imagine Chen, a peasant, rising before dawn, his back already aching from yesterday's plow. He's knee-deep in a rice paddy, swatting mosquitoes, praying the rains come but not too hard. His tools are crude: a wooden plow, a sickle, maybe an ox if he's lucky. That ox is his best friend, his lifeline to tilling 10 acres. Lose it, and he's just hands against dirt. Chen works through rain, drought, or locust swarms. Each day, a gamble against nature and taxes that take half his grain. This isn't poetic toil, it's bone-deep exhaustion, where a bad harvest means hunger for his children. Women's work was a relentless sequel. Picture Chen's wife, Lin, balancing fieldwork with a household's weight. She plants rice alongside him, then returns to cook congee, clean the hut, spin hemp into thread, weave cloth, and raise children. If dinner's late or a child falls ill, the blame falls on her. Rest is a noblewoman's luxury, not Lin's reality. Her hands, calloused as her husband's weave fabric that might pay the tax collector. But there's no praise for her labor, only expectation. Confucian ideals lauded farmers but ignored women's toil. Their work a silent scaffold holding families together. Artisans face their own grind. Imagine a potter, his wheels spinning under a tin roof, shaping bowls for a distant city. His skill crafts beauty, porcelain that gleams like moonlight, but his status is low. His pay barely buys tofu. Carpenters, weavers, blacksmiths, they're vital but undervalued. Their hands creating the empire's wealth while their lives stay lean. Merchants, though richer, worked under a cloud of scorn. Picture a silk trader, his cart heavy with bolts of shimmering cloth, haggling in a market. His silver piles high, but Confucian values brand him a moral leech, profiting off others' labor. No matter his wealth, he's a social pariah. His work a paradox of gain and shame. Then there's corvée labor, the empire's mandatory service. Imagine Chen, yanked from his fields to build a canal or repair a road for the emperor's glory. It's unpaid, often barefoot, and far from home. Refuse, and you're a criminal, maybe a rebel, facing flogging or worse. These projects, canals, walls, tombs, were the empire's arteries, but they drained peasants' strength. A new road might never benefit Chen's village, yet his labor, and sometimes his life, built it. This wasn't just work, it was sacrifice, a tax paid in sweat and years. Why was labor so grueling? The empire's scale demanded it. Millions needed food, silk, tools, and safety, and only constant work kept the system running. Confucianism framed labor as duty, tying farmers to fields, artisans to crafts, women to hearths. The state reinforced this with taxes and corvée, ensuring every hand served the emperor's vision. Scarcity sharpened the edge grain-fed armies before families, and lords claimed land and labor first. The empire's grandeur, from the Great Wall to palace scrolls, rested on the bent backs of men like Chen and women like Lin. Their toil the foundation of dynastic dreams. The consequences were harsh. Endless labor broke Chen's back curves by 30. Lin's hands trembled from weaving. Malnutrition, from sparse diets, made work harder, and disease struck weary workers fastest. Emotionally, the grind dulled hope. Work offered no escape, no reward beyond survival. Yet it bound communities, villagers, shared tools, helped with harvests, wove cloth together. The empire's hierarchy isolated, but labor connected, each shared task a thread of mutual need. Socially, work reinforced roles. Farmers fed, artisans crafted, merchants traded, but none rose above their station. The system thrived on their effort, but offered no ladder to climb. Resilience flickered in the margins. Chen sings to his fields, his voice easing the ache. Lin barters her cloth for a neighbor's rice, her cunning outwitting hunger. Artisans etch secret patterns into their work, a quiet claim to pride. Merchants, scorned but sly, invest in sons' education, dreaming of scholar status. Women, especially, were unsung pillars. Their labor field, loom, hearth, a web of survival, a shared harvest meal, a mended tool, a child taught to plant. These were acts of defiance against toil's weight. Work wasn't joy, but it was purpose, a stubborn pulse in the empire's vast body. This world of work and labor reveals imperial China's truth, a place where toil was worship, where survival demanded sacrifice. Chen's rice, Lin's thread, the potter's bowl, these weren't just products but proofs of endurance, each task a bow to the empire's order. The fields, workshops, and corvée roads were stages for duty, where every worker played their part, their sweat the ink of history. Yet the shared song, the bartered cloth, the hidden pattern they whisper of hope, of lives that toiled but never broke. As we linger in these fields, Chen's plow stilled and Lin's loom quiet, let's turn to the empire's other arena of effort. Work bound the common folk, but for a few, ambition pointed to the imperial exams, a grueling path to power. Picture a scholar, his candle burning low, or a courtier navigating the forbidden city's intrigues. How did exams and court life test minds and souls, shaping the empire's elite? That's where we're headed next, into a world where words were weapons and every step was a gamble. So, let's keep wandering these ancient paths, where toil meets ambition and resilience glimmers softly. Let's drift into the candlelit study huts and gilded halls of imperial China, where the air hums with the scratch of brushes and the whisper of ambition. It's the Ming Dynasty, around 1400 CE, and a young scholar hunches over Confucian texts, his eyes bleary from years of memorizing ancient wisdom. In the Forbidden City, a courtier treads softly, his silk robe brushing polished floors, every word weighed against betrayal. This is part 7 of our journey, diving into the imperial exams and court life. A world where minds were tested to breaking in power was a dance of danger. Picture a system where a single exam could lift you to glory or bury you in shame, where a misplaced poem could end in exile. The heart of this world was the imperial exam system, a grueling gateway to power that promised upward mobility but delivered torment. For men with a spark of ambition, the exams were the only path to becoming a scholar official, draped in silk and seated in the emperor's service. Imagine Liang, a farmer's son, studying since childhood in a freezing hut, his fingers curled around a brush like claws. The exams demanded mastery of Confucian classics, thousands of characters memorized word for word, plus poetic essays that sang with moral clarity. A smudged character, an edgy metaphor, or a shaky hand meant failure, and failure meant returning to the fields, your family's sacrifices wasted. The highest test, the Jinshi, was held in the capital, locking candidates in coffin-like cubicles for days with just ink, paper, and dread. Some fainted, some went mad, a few died from the strain. Liang's neighbor tested into his 60s, over 40 times, his hope a stubborn ghost. Passing brought a government post, respect, and chairs to sit on. Failing brought whispers, your mother's tears, your father's silent stare. Court life, for those who passed, was no reprieve. It was a battlefield of silk and smiles. Picture the Forbidden City, its red walls hiding a maze of intrigue. Officials, eunuchs, concubines, all played a game where a wrong word was treason. Imagine a new official, his Jinchi rank fresh navigating court. He mispronounces the emperor's name treason, hesitates before kneeling treason adjacent. Even poetry was a trap. A verse about wilting flowers could be read as imperial critique, costing your head. Eunuchs, castrated but cunning, held terrifying power, running spy networks and whispering to the emperor. Concubines schemed for favor, their sons' futures a high-stakes prize, while the empress wove plots to keep them in check. Succession disputes turned bloody secret wills, poisoned cups, sudden silences. Every move was watched. Every rival waited for your stumble. Why was this system so brutal? The exams ensured a meritocracy, in theory, drawing talent to govern a vast empire. Confucianism demanded moral perfection, and the exams tested not just knowledge but character. Court life, though, was about control. The emperor needed loyalty, not rebellion. So intrigue kept officials divided, too busy plotting to unite against him. The stakes, power, wealth, legacy made every test and courtly step a crucible. The exam's rigor and court's danger weeded out the weak, but they also crushed dreams, turning ambition into fear. The consequences were profound. Exams broke minds and bodies, leaving failed scholars like Liang haunted by shame. Court life frayed nerves. Officials lived in paranoia, their families vulnerable to collective punishment. Yet both shaped the empire's strength, producing bureaucrats who governed with precision and courtiers who kept the throne secure. Emotionally, the toll was heavy. Ambition became a cage, success a gilded trap. Resilience glimmered in persistence. Liang's 40 attempts, a courtier's careful poetry, small acts of defiance against despair. The exams and court were the empire's mind. Sharp, but fragile, their rigor a testament to human will. As we linger in these halls, Liang's brush stilled, and the court's whispers fading. Let's step into the empire's watchful shadows. Exams and court life tested the elite, but for all, a web of surveillance and law ensured obedience. Picture a village elder, noting your every move, or a magistrate wielding bamboo rods. How did this system of control shape lives? And what happened when rebellion sparked? That's where we're headed next, into a world where eyes were everywhere, and defiance was a deadly gamble. So, let's keep wandering these ancient paths, where duty meets danger, and hope burns quietly. Now we're in the quiet alleys and bustling markets of imperial China, where the air carries the clink of coins and the weight of unseen eyes. It's the Qing dynasty, around 1700 CE, and a peasant hurries home, glancing over his shoulder. A magistrate's scroll lists crimes, from tax evasion to sassy poems, while a rebel's name fades from a village's memory. The core was control. The empire's surveillance wasn't high-tech, but human, a network of eyes from villages to palaces. Imagine Wei, a farmer, pausing mid-plow as the village baojia, the local elder, notes his late tax payment. Neighbors watch too, incentivized to report odd behavior, like hoarding grain or skipping a tribute. In cities, yamen runners, magistrate aides patrolled, their scrolls tracking every cough or whisper. Eunuchs in the Forbidden City ran secret police, their spies catching courtly dissent. Even silence was suspect. What was Wei hiding? This wasn't paranoia, it was policy, ensuring harmony by making privacy a myth. Law was the empire's fist. The Tang and Qing codes detailed everything: taxes, hairstyles, mourning periods. Picture a merchant wearing a forbidden red hat on a festival day. He's fined, maybe flogged. Punishments were lessons in pain, bamboo rods for minor crimes, branding or exile for worse. Serious offenses, like treason, brought slow slicing, a public spectacle of cuts until death. Torture was routine, not cruelty but procedure. Imagine Wei, accused of stealing rice. He's tied to a bench, his back lashed, until he confesses. Guilty or not, collective punishment was worse. Wei's cousin's loose talk could doom the whole family, their home seized, their names erased. Rebellion was suicide. Picture a peasant, fed up with taxes, burning a ledger with his neighbors. They dream of justice, but the imperial army arrives, crossbows gleaming. Confucianism branded rebels as cosmic threats, disrupting heaven's order. Punishments were brutal beheadings, quartering, entire villages razed. The Yellow Turban or White Lotus rebellions flared but were crushed, survivors enslaved or exiled. Even sassy poetry hinting at discontent could land you in chains. Your words tortured out under bamboo. The message was clear: obey or vanish. Why so harsh? Stability was the empire's lifeline. With millions to govern, dissent was a fire that could burn the dynasty down. Confucianism tied loyalty to order, and the state used surveillance and law to enforce it. Collective punishment deterred rebellion by spreading fear. Your mistake doomed your kin. The human cost was staggering. Surveillance bred mistrust. Neighbors became spies, fraying community. Law broke bodies and spirits. Wei's flogging scars him, his family shunned. Rebellion's failures left villages ghost-like, their stories silenced. Yet resilience persisted. Wei pays his taxes, whispering defiance in private. A poet hides his verses. A rebel's widow teaches her son to endure. These quiet acts, unseen but stubborn, kept hope alive. This world of surveillance, law, and rebellion reveals imperial China's iron heart, a place where order was God, where defiance was crushed under bamboo and blood. Wei's watched steps, the magistrate's scroll, the rebel's erased name. These were the empire's chains, binding millions to harmony's cost. Yet the hidden poem, the whispered curse, the survivor's grit they flicker like stars, proof of a spirit that bent but never broke. As we linger in these shadowed alleys, Wei's footsteps fading and the magistrate's scroll rolling shut, let's turn to the homes where lives were shaped. Surveillance and law bound the empire, but marriage and gender roles defined its heart. Picture a bride, her dowry heavy, bowing to in-laws she's never met. How did these unions, ruled by duty not love, forge families and futures? That's where we're headed next, into a world where vows were contracts and women's lives were woven in silence. So, let's keep wandering these ancient paths, where tradition meets sacrifice and hope glows softly. Let's step softly into the shadowed courtyards of imperial China, where the air hums with the rustle of silk veils and the quiet clink of dowry coins. It's the Tang dynasty, around 800 CE, and a bride, her face hidden beneath a crimson veil, kneels before her new in-laws, her heart a tangle of duty and dread. Nearby, a mother whispers to her daughter, teaching her to move silently, to serve without complaint. Marriage in this world wasn't about romance. It was a deal, as binding as a tax scroll. Imagine Shu, a peasant girl, promised at 6 to a boy she'll meet on her wedding day. Her parents, not her heart, choose her fate, often with a matchmaker poring over star charts and family ledgers. Compatibility meant aligned horoscopes and a dowry cloth, coins, maybe a scrap of land to seal the bond. Shu's dowry, a bundle of hemp her mother wove through countless nights, is her family's farewell, a payment for her new life. On her wedding day, she sheds her surname, leaving her home to join her husband's, where she serves his parents, grandparents, even the irritable uncle muttering in the corner. Her role is clear bear sons, obey in-laws, and keep her voice low. A sharp word or empty womb risks replacement by a concubine, a legal move for men of means. Gender roles were carved in stone. Women were born to submit first to fathers, then husbands, then sons. Picture Shu, rising before dawn to cook rice porridge, sweep the dirt floor, and weave hemp, her thoughts locked behind a quiet face. Confucian teachings painted women as shadows, their virtue in silence and service. Men held the reins. A husband could divorce Shu for jealousy, gossip, or illness, one of the 7 outs that branded her a failure. Women had no such escape. Divorce was a social death sentence. Concubinage skewed things further. Wealthy men took multiple concubines, their sons competing for inheritance, while Shu, as wife, managed the household, her heart a bystander. Her value lay in male heirs, each son a thread in the family's eternal chain. Why so strict? Harmony was the empire's pulse. Confucianism linked family order to cosmic balance. A dutiful wife mirrored a loyal subject, keeping the emperor's mandate secure. Marriages cemented alliances, dowries fueled village economies, and sons ensured ancestral rights continued. The state reinforced this with laws defying in-laws could bring fines or worse, chaining women to their roles. The cost was heavy. Shu's dreams of reading, of seeing the world beyond her village, are buried under chores. A childless wife faced shame, perhaps banishment. Men, too, bore pressure. A sonless husband dishonored his ancestors, his legacy frayed. Yet this system wove families through hardship. Shu's obedience secured her children's future, her toil a silent offering. The toll wasn't just physical. Women's lives shrank to courtyards, their voices muted. A sharp tongue or barrenness could unravel a life, leaving Shu ostracized or replaced. Emotionally, the weight of duty dulled joy. A wife's role was to endure, not to dream. Men faced their own cage. Failure to produce heirs stained their honor, a quiet but crushing blow. Socially, these roles locked the empire's structure in place, each family a brick in its vast wall, but cracks let light through. Shu stitches stories into her weaving, her needle a secret voice. Mothers pass down quiet songs, teaching daughters to bend but not break. Some concubines, bearing sons, carve out influence, steering household politics with a whisper. These acts, small and unseen, are threads of defiance, weaving hope into a tapestry of obligation. This system wasn't just custom. It was the empire's skeleton. Marriages, like rice harvests, fueled stability, binding families to villages, villages to the throne. The dowry chest, the silent bride, the son's birth. These were rituals of survival, each act a nod to Confucian order. Yet, the human spirit flickered. A shared glance over a dowry's weight, a lullaby sung to a newborn, a concubine's cunning maneuver. These were quiet rebellions against a world that demanded surrender. Women, especially, were the empire's unsung weavers, their labor and loyalty holding families together, their resilience a pulse beneath the surface. Marriage and gender roles in imperial China weren't just rules. They were the empire's breath, each vowing a knot in its enduring fabric. Shu's bowed head, her mother's whispered lessons, the concubine's calculated smile. These shaped a society where duty trumped desire, where harmony came at the cost of dreams. Yet in every woven cloth, every silent sacrifice, there's a spark of endurance, proof that even in a world of iron roles, the heart finds ways to sing. As we linger in Shu's courtyard, her veil lifted and her dowry chest closed, let's cross oceans to a frozen trail where duty meets desperation. Marriage bound China's families, but in 1846 America, the Donner Party's westward trek turned dreams to nightmares, their survival a test of human limits. Picture a mother cradling her child in a snowbound camp, her hope buried under blizzards. How did their tragedy reflect the cost of ambition? That's where we're headed next. into a world where shortcuts led to starvation and resilience burned in the cold. So, let's keep wandering these paths, where sacrifice meets survival and hope glimmers faintly. We're now trudging through the biting winds of the Sierra Nevada, where snow falls like a heavy curtain and hope freezes in the tracks of creaking wagons. It's 1846, and the Donner Party 87 pioneers led by George Donner, Jacob Donner, and James Reed chase dreams of California's golden valleys. The Donner Party wasn't made of thrill seekers or gold hunters. They were farmers, craftsmen, and families, lured by tales of fertile land. Their journey began with promise, wagons loaded with dreams, children singing hymns at dusk. But their downfall was the Hastings Cutoff, an untested route peddled by Lansford Hastings, who'd never traveled it with wagons. Promised to shave weeks off the Oregon Trail, it seemed a godsend. Imagine the group, trusting Hastings' letters left by guides, veering from the proven path. Spirits high, they faced the Wasatch Mountains, expecting a quick pass. Instead, cliffs forced them to dismantle wagons, hauling pieces by hand, progress slowing to a crawl. Tempers flared, supplies dwindled, and days bled into weeks. Then came the Great Salt Lake Desert, a shimmering wasteland Hastings claimed was a 2-day crossing. It took 5. Picture oxen staggering, water barrels dry, wagons abandoned in alkaline dust, families like the Reeds left heirlooms behind, their steps heavier with each loss. By the time they rejoined the main trail, they'd lost critical weeks, other wagon trains already over the Sierra Nevada. Exhausted, fractured, they pushed on, unaware that winter was stealing their chance. October brought them to the Sierra's eastern base, but snow fell early, thick and relentless. The group splintered. Some surged ahead, others, like the Donners, lagged with broken axles. Blizzards sealed the passes, trapping them at Truckee Lake, now Donner Lake, and Alder Creek. Makeshift cabins rose from pine logs and wagon scraps, livestock slaughtered, hides stretched into tents. Snow piled 10 feet deep, rations vanished. Imagine Sarah Graves, 19, boiling rawhide, gnawing leather belts, her siblings chewing bark until gums bled. Hunger wasn't loud. It was a slow, silent thief, stealing warmth, then life. Children wasted. Adults stared into the white abyss, calculating footsteps to nowhere. By December, 15 of the strongest formed the forlorn hope, lashing crude snowshoes to bleeding feet. Their scraps of oxhide ran out, and death came quietly from Franklin Graves, Antonio, young Lemuel Murphy. The survivors, weeping, carved meat from their dead, a desperate calculus: starve or live. Only 5 women. 2 men stumbled out, their frostbitten faces bearing news of the trapped. Rescue came in February, 1847, but too late for many. Picture the first party reaching Donner Lake, finding cabins buried, survivors skeletal, frozen bodies stacked like firewood. The stench of decay hung heavy, the living too weak to speak. Children were saved first, small and light, carried through drifts parents couldn't cross. Over months, 4 missions battled avalanches, saving 47. The truth leaked out: cannibalism, whispered tales of murder. James Reed, banished earlier for a defensive killing, returned as a rescuer, saving his wife and children. George Donner died. His wife Tamsin stayed, her fate grim, perhaps killed by those she trusted. Of 87, 40 perished, their names etched in snow and shame. Why did this happen? Ambition blinded them. Hastings' untested route, poor decisions, and early snows were a perfect storm. The cutoff delayed Wasatch's cliffs. The desert's mirage stole their margin. Leadership faltered. The Donners and Reed couldn't unify the group. Nature didn't care. Blizzards buried their dreams without mercy. The consequences reshaped America's westward myth. Newspapers spun cannibal horror, tarnishing manifest destiny's glow. Survivors like Sarah Graves faced fame and judgment, their trauma a public spectacle. Virginia Reed, 13, wrote later, urging pioneers to shun shortcuts, her words a plea born of pain. The social impact was profound. The tragedy questioned the pioneer spirit, exposing its hubris. Survivors were heroes to some, monsters to others, their choices debated in saloons and parlors. Emotionally, the scars never faded Sarah's silence. Reed's haunted letters spoke of a wound that time couldn't close, yet resilience burned bright. Survivors rebuilt. Reed prospered in San Jose, Virginia, married and wrote, their lives a defiant answer to loss. Families shared what little they had. Mothers fed children before themselves. The forlorn hope survivors carried news at unthinkable cost. The Donner Party wasn't just failure, it was endurance, a testament to the human will to live, even when hope was a flicker in the snow. This tragedy reveals a raw truth ambition can blind, but survival demands courage. The snowbound cabins, the forlorn hope's grim march, Tamsin's final stand, they're not just history but humanity, stripped to its core. Each bite of leather, each step through drifts, was a choice to fight, a spark of defiance against a merciless world. As we linger in the Sierra's cold, the Donner Party's fires dim and their tracks fade. Let's return to Imperial China, where one woman's ambition defied an empire's chains. The pioneers battled snow, but Wu Zetian fought a dynasty's rules to claim the throne as China's only female emperor. Picture her, rising from concubine to ruler, her will reshaping history. How did her reign challenge a world of men? That's where we're headed next, into a tale of power and defiance. So, let's keep wandering these paths, where survival meets splendor and hope blazes fiercely. The Tang Dynasty, where the air shimmers with incense and the weight of whispered secrets. It's 690 CE, and Wu Zetian, once a lowly concubine, crowns herself emperor, her phoenix headdress, a defiant blaze against a male-only throne. Wu's story begins in 624 CE, born to a merchant's wealth, but not royalty. At 40, her wit and beauty drew Emperor Taizong's eye, making her a concubine in his vast harem. Unlike others stitching silk, Wu studied history, politics, and power's quiet gears. She memorized Taizong's moods, learned when to speak or fade into the screen's shadow. When Taizong died in 649, custom demanded she enter a convent, her life over. But Wu had woven a thread to his son, Li Ji, future Emperor Gaozong, a bond of affection or calculation that outlasted death. Recalled by Empress Wang to divert Gaozong from a rival, Wu returned not as a pawn, but a predator. Wang's gambit was like handing a tiger the palace keys. Wu bore Gaozong's sons, cementing her place. But she didn't stop at motherhood. She became his confidant, her whispers shaping edicts. In 664, tragedy struck or was staged. Wu's infant daughter died, and she accused Wang of murder. The fallout was brutal. Wang and rival consort Xiao were deposed, mutilated, their limbs hacked, tongues silenced. By 655, Wu was empress, her rise a tapestry of blood and brilliance. As Gaozong's health faltered, Wu ruled through him, reviewing memorials, issuing decrees, her shadow longer than his throne. She championed Buddhism, casting herself as Maitreya's reincarnation, a divine shield against Confucian scorn. Her reforms broke aristocratic strangleholds, opening exams to commoners, rewarding merit over blood. In 683, Gaozong died. Wu's son Zhongzong ascended but showed independence, appointing his in-laws. Wu swiftly demoted him, installing pliant Ruizong, ruling as regent. By 690, she shed pretense, declaring the Zhou dynasty and becoming Huangdi Wu Zetian China's only female emperor. Her reign was a marvel. Agriculture flourished, borders held, taxes eased for farmers. She built Buddhist temples, their spires proclaiming her divine right. Yet her rule was iron. Secret police sniffed out dissent, executions were swift, and critics vanished, exiled, suicided, or silenced. She relied on loyalists, elevating commoners who owed her everything. But her favor bred envy, especially over the Zhang brothers, charming courtiers whose influence sparked whispers of decadence. Why did Wu dare this? Opportunity met genius. Confucian patriarchy left gaps in motherhood's sanctity. Divine myths she exploited ruthlessly. Her reforms strengthened the state, but her methods, fear, surveillance mirrored the empire's own control. Stability demanded loyalty. And Wu, a woman in a man's world, wielded terror to secure it. The consequences were seismic. Her reign shattered gender norms, empowering women briefly female officials, scholars but provoked backlash. Confucian historians vilified her as a seductress, multiplying her cruelties in scrolls. Her reforms, meritocratic exams, Buddhist patronage endured, but her name was erased by the Tang's return. Socially, she was a paradox, a beacon for women, a tyrant to elites. Emotionally, her isolation grew. Sons resented her, allies betrayed, her legacy a battlefield. The cost was steep. Wu's enemies, Wang, Shao, countless officials paid in blood. Her sons, pawns in her game, chafed under her grip. The Zhang brothers' rise tarnished her later years, fueling tales of a lonely empress clinging to youth. Yet her achievements were undeniable. A stable empire, a reformed bureaucracy, a cultural bloom. Her Buddhist monuments, like the Longmen Grotto's Vairocana Buddha bearing her likeness, stood as stone defiance. She ruled not to be loved, but to endure. Her reign a tightrope over a patriarchal abyss. Resilience defined her. Wu navigated a palace of knives, outwitting scholars steeped in Confucius. She turned motherhood into monarchy, divinity into legitimacy. When illness and a 705 and coup forced her abdication, she stepped down, restoring Zhongzong, but kept her emperor's title, her influence lingering until her death that year. The Tang scrubbed her name, but history refused to forget. Poets sang her as heroine or villain. Operas dramatized her fire. Modern scholars see genius as a ruler who outperformed male peers. Her Zhou dynasty, a fleeting revolution. Wu Zetian's reign wasn't just power. It was a fracture in time. Her reforms reshaped the Tang. Her defiance lit a path for women. Her terror mirrored the empire's own. The phoenix crown, the bloodied court, the erased scrolls, they're not just history, but a woman's war against a world that said no. Her name, though scratched from stone, burns still, a testament to ambition's triumph and its price. As we stand at the crossroads of ancient China's rice fields and the Sierra Nevada's frozen trails, the whispers of imperial China and the Donner Party fade into twilight. From Confucian hierarchies to pioneers' desperate survival, from Wu Zetian's bold reign to peasants' silent toil, we've traced stories of ambition, endurance, and sacrifice. This conclusion weaves their shared essence, humanity's unyielding spirit against crushing odds. Imperial China's splendor silk roads, grand palaces rose on the labor of millions bound by duty, showing stability's cost in freedom. The Donner Party's tragedy reveals ambition's danger when unchecked. Yet their survival burns with raw will. Wu Zetian's throne, a defiance of patriarchy, proves one woman's resolve can reshape history. These tales, though distant, echo resilience, a quiet fire through empires and snowstorms. What do they teach us? Order is fragile. China's harmony or America's westward dream falters without balance. choice. Even in despair Wu's cunning, a pioneer's grim resolve, a peasant's hidden hope shapes destinies. Memory honors the unseen, their struggles seeding our world of plenty. Today, we face inequality, climate challenges, and ambition's risks, but their grit lights a path to adapt, persist, and hope. Picture a farmer sowing rice at dawn, a Donner survivor stepping into sunlight, Wu's shadow on a palace wall. Their lives, uncelebrated, forged history. Let's carry their strength, cherish our freedoms, and build a world where every voice sings. Rest now, friends, and dream of trails ahead. Hope for a lantern in the dark.